This is the story about 3 strange encounters that my family experienced. Encounters that still haunt us to this day. A few months ago, we made the move from the city to a house in the country. The country house had always been a dream for my dad. He paid for the land and to have the house built. It was a big move for us, as we'd always been city people. Late in the day when we moved, I took a break from the job of unpacking and went to the front porch just as dusk was falling. Thick woods surrounded the house with tall trees. After living in the city all my life, I found the air to be fresh and sweet. I was about to go inside when I caught some movement in the woods. The light was dim among the trees, but I saw a figure in the shadows. It was at least 100 feet away, so it was hard to make it out. I thought whatever it was looked like it was moving on all 4 legs. What I could tell was that it was covered with fur. I called my dad out on the porch and told him to take a look at what I saw. It took him a few seconds, but I watched a very serious expression come over his face. Then he said, "That's the biggest wolf I've ever seen." It seemed to be getting darker by the second, and he said, "It's not going to the woods at night for a while, okay?" What could I say but yes, and he went inside, but I stayed on the porch watching the figure that was only a big dark shadow by then. I was about to go inside when the last rays of sunlight must have caught the creature's eyes, and they glowed like hot coals in the dark. I can tell you it sent a chill down my spine. During the next few nights, I saw those glowing eyes out in the woods. One night, my sister screamed and said she saw those eyes just outside the window of her room. That's when we put a shotgun by the door. That was just our first encounter. Later that week, I was asked to drive to the store to get some groceries. The road into town was an old 2-lane affair. It was so narrow in places, it was hard for 2 cars to even pass by each other. Trees crowded in from the sides hanging over the road. It was so far out in the middle of nowhere, there were no streetlights, so the only illumination came from the lights of the car. I knew I shouldn't be talking on the phone while I drove, but I was chatting away with my brother when I saw something appear on the road ahead. I slammed the brakes hard and almost ended up skidding off the road. When the car finally came to a stop, it sat sideways, partially facing the trees. Somewhere in the process, I dropped my phone into the passenger seat. 20 feet in front of me, I saw a dark figure in the road, and I knew what it was. It was the wolf. But it was bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen, standing almost as tall as a man. It stood in the road, and I could see wisps of its breathing drifting around its head in the moist night air. But mostly, it was just a big shadow. But what I could see were its eyes, just like before. They glowed fiercely in the darkness. I hadn't thought of bringing any weapons with me, so I hoped and prayed it just stayed put. Since the car was sideways in the road, I wasn't able to easily back up with the trees behind me. Going forward meant I was driving right at the thing. As it turned out, it made my decision for me because it started in my direction. It moved with the grace of a tiger, and I began to sweat all over my body. The damn thing was so big, I was afraid it would hit the car. I envisioned it breaking through the windshield and coming in right at me. It picked up speed, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it was on me. So I did the only thing I could do, and I started honking the horn. I really laid on it. For some reason, the thing stopped just in front of the car, only a few feet away. It stood there, staring in the window with those red, fiery eyes. It breathed in and out, and I thought I could smell it through the windshield. It was an animal, musky smell. I was positive it was ready to pounce on me when another car appeared down the road in the distance, heading towards us. That must have spooked the creature, because the next thing I knew, it bounded off into the trees and was gone. That wasn't my last encounter with the beast. The best or the worst was yet to come. "4 days after my encounter on the road, the creature came back. By then, my mom had done a little research about the folklore in our area. It turns out the locals, going way back, talked about a creature called the loup-garou. It was a wolf-like creature with a human body, much like a werewolf. We all knew it was crazy to consider that these creatures were even real. These were the things of horror stories and movies, myths, fictions, legends. We believed. It was nightfall when my brother saw something in the woods in front of our house. Only this time it wasn't a single creature. There were 3 of them. They moved through the trees, pacing around our house, almost like they were waiting for us to come out, like they were challenging us. Since the first encounter, none of us went outside after sunset. Being cooped up in the house, almost like we were trapped, was getting to us. So that night we decided we had to make our stand. We grabbed our guns. It was me, my brother, and my dad. My mom didn't want us to go out, but this was our house and our land. It was about 100 feet from the front of the house to the tree line. We covered the ground quickly. My dad and brother had rifles and I had a pistol. That left me on flashlight duty. I directed the beam to the woods and 3 sets of glowing eyes stared back at us. I could also see that these creatures had ears like dogs, but taller. The other striking thing about them was they stood on 2 legs like a man. That almost stopped us in our tracks, but my brother was cockier than me, and my dad was just plain mad. My brother decided it was time to start shooting and started blasting away into the trees. My father joined him. But I held back. I could swear they were making direct hits on the creatures, but these creatures looked unfazed. My dad said something like, "Our bullets aren't doing anything." That's when the creatures split up and fanned out into the trees. It was easy to see that the ones on the sides were trying to flank us. My dad yelled for us to move back to the house. We did this carefully, not turning to run, but slowly backing up with our weapons ready. We covered that space back to the house as quickly as we could, but the distance felt like a mile as we watched those glowing eyes moving in the trees. Just as we made it to the porch, something let out a loud howl. It was like a wolf, but deeper. A few seconds later, another howl answered it, but it was off to the right. A third howl joined in the other 2, echoing loudly on the moist night air. My brother, my dad, and I got back to the house. I never seen my dad so scared. I saw his hand shaking. None of us slept that night. All 3 of us stayed up on guard duty, staring into the woods, waiting for the attack that we were sure would come. But it didn't. It never did come. But we saw those glowing eyes in the woods every night and heard the howling. It was like they were telling us that we were in their woods and we didn't belong there. Eventually, we got the message loud and clear. None of us left the house at night, and we rarely slept. 2 months later, we packed up and moved back to the city.